All right, last time we looked at how to create towers and how to shoot at enemies and how to create health bars. So something I'd like to do this time is create waves of enemies, so create a series of them. The other thing I'd like to do is add in a base and have it use lives and have its own health bar. So starting from where we were before, last time I was using a controller who's just setting an alarm and it's just continually creating these things. I actually don't want this thing. That would go forever. I'm actually going to delete the controller out. Notice it deleted the object out of the room as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button that continually sends out waves of enemies every time I click on it. So if I click on it, it's going to send out the first wave of enemies. When that's done, if I click on it again, it'll send out the second wave, and so on. So I need to create a sprite. Maybe this soccer ball. Sure. I'm going to call this next wave. And I'm going to create an object called next wave. Has that sprite. And this guy is going to keep track of sending out enemies. So to begin with, what I'm going to need to do is actually create something called a timeline of enemies. So I'm going to create a new timeline. Looks like this little hourglass here, where you can create it here just above objects. I'm going to call this wave 1. So unlike alarms, where you set it to a certain time and it counts down to 0, timelines start at 0 and count up, and you tell it what happens at particular moments in time. So for example, I'm going to send out a wave of 3 enemies to begin with. So I'm going to add, at moment 30, something that happens here. In particular, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create one of my enemies. And seeing how I'm using absolute, x and y don't matter. Also, I want to create another one at 60. Create a new enemy, add at 90 a new enemy. So the idea is that this wave is going to send out at moments 30, 60, and 90 a new enemy. So a second apart each, 3 different enemies. When I click on this next wave object, I want to actually start this timeline. So mouse left press. Under main 2, I'm going to set a new timeline. This timeline is going to be wave 1, starting at 0. I want it to start immediately, and I don't want it to loop. So if I go in and set the next wave in the room, I click on this, 3 guys come out. Now the way I've set this up right now, there's a problem, which is if I just keep clicking, it'll reset it every time. What I'd like to happen is, once you send out the first wave, it actually doesn't let you click again in the middle of a wave. So if I click a whole bunch right here, then it starts the wave. So it keeps interrupting the timeline. So I'm going to add a create event and a variable to keep track of whether or not I'm allowed to send out next wave. So to start with, send wave is going to be a 1. If send wave is a 1, then I'm allowed to do this. And I also want to set send wave to be a 0 inside of here. So if I click on it once, it'll set this to a 0. It'll start the wave. And because send wave will be a 0, it won't allow me to restart a new wave over and over again. Now I do have to watch out. I need to make sure that I set it back to a 1. I think what I'm going to do is, at the end of wave 1, this timeline over here, in this last step, I'm going to let people actually send out another wave. So now I'm going to reset it to a 1 at the very end of this. So once the wave has got to step 90, it'll set send wave to a 1, so I'm allowed to start another wave. Another thing I like to do is make it so that every time I press, there's some sort of counter that keeps track of which wave I'm sending out. I think I'll call this current, and I will set this at 0. And every time I press, if I'm allowed to send a wave, I'm going to set current to be 1 relative. So the very first time it starts at 0, as soon as I press on this, it's now a 1. If current is 1, I want to send wave 1. Now if it's not, so if I press the second time, I'm going to want to send out a second wave. So let me create a new timeline. This is going to be wave 2. Let's see, maybe I'll send out 5 every 15 steps. So send out 5 enemies, send out the enemy. Now I could create a new 30, drag it in, set things up. Another thing I can do is I can just duplicate this and go from 50 to 30. And now 30 has a copy of that, and I didn't have to do anything. Fantastic. Duplicate. 45. Duplicate. 60. Duplicate. 75. That was awesome and much easier. In my next wave, what I'd like to do is set up, if current is a 2, equal to a 2, then I want to send out wave 2. So if send wave is a 1, then I set current to be 1 more, so I'm adding relative. I'm going to set send wave to be 0. And then depending on which wave it's currently on, I'm going to send out each of these. One more thing I need to do though. Remember the send wave I have at the last step? I need to make sure I put that in the last step of wave 2 as well. So every single one of your waves is going to need this so that you're allowed to send the next wave out. Otherwise, you might get stuck. So don't forget, at the end of every single one of your waves, to send out a new wave by setting it to 1. So basically, you just duplicate this pattern to create more waves. If I want to create a third wave, I'm going to create a new timeline. At the end of that, set send wave to a 1. And then just add in another thing here, which says if current is equal to 3, set a new timeline right here. All right, so what about a base? I was talking about that earlier. So now what I should do is make sure that the enemies, when they reach the end of the path, have something they can collide with. So I want to place a base right about there. I'm just going to create a dummy one for now. You'll have to create your own. So when the ghost gets to my money, is going to be my base. Then I'm going to have it lose lives. Actually, let me do health this time. We've done so much with lives. Let's do health. Oops, this is the path. All right, so unfortunately, there's no way in this view to take a look at where the path is. So I believe it's right about there. Is that right path? Close, a little further down. There we go. So I'm going to start with a certain amount of health, and I'm going to draw a health bar above this guy. So when this thing is created, I'm going to set my health to be 100. Why not? The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the health bar. Since I used centering before, I'm going to recenter this one as well to give it a similar idea. So this guy, to draw a health bar, is going to need a draw event. There's actually a built-in one, which actually changes color as you go. Kind of nifty. I need to redraw my sprite, or that's not going to show up. So to redraw my sprite, that's this top left one at the draw event. Draw my sprite at my X and Y position. That's fine for the subimage. That'll make it so the money draws. Now, under score, I need to do the tan draw health bar. This is a similar X and Y position. This is the top left of the bar. These 2 points define the bottom right. So I'm going to do X minus 16 again, X plus 16, Y minus 21, y minus 16. By the way, if your sprite is wider or if you want a wider health bar, you can increase these numbers here. So if I want it twice as wide, I could just subtract 32 and add 32. I'd make my bar twice as wide as it is now. If I need it further up, I would subtract more from the y position. You have to do that from both numbers, but that's the idea. This automatically keeps track of your health for you and draws it such that it changes over time. So I don't need to worry about the drawing 2 health bars thing that I did with the enemies. This is built in. So that draws my health bar. Now I need to actually make it so that when the enemy hits me, I lose health. So when I have a collision with the enemy, I'm going to set my health to be maybe minus 20 relative. And I better destroy the enemy, or he's going to stand on me and in 5 steps destroy me. That would suck. So destroy other. Away we go. Boy, this game is looking good. If only I had made my own sprites. Here they come on the path. They have their health bars. That's cool. Here they come in a spiral. It's getting tense. All right. So they subtracted health. Now, I haven't done anything with setting no more health. So I'm going to have to do that so that when I have no more health on my base, I do endgame sorts of things. It's very similar to no more lives. There's an event under other where you set no more health and say what's going to happen, just like what we've done with a lot of our other games. Oh no! Now, I'm actually in the negatives, but the health bar won't go below that. So I would need to do something that deals with the end of with the enemies destroying my base. All right, so this shows you how to do waves, timelines, how to set up a button that sets your next wave running, and shows the base health bars.